Hello everybody, and welcome to another physical education and wellness curriculum implementation video. I am Paul Marlette. I am going to keep working through this video series on effective pedagogy and ways to improve the art of teaching in the gym. So in this session, we are going to be taking a look at, there we go, student success. So this session is a lot about how you engage with students, how you give them feedback, how you introduce activities and introduce skills or games in a way that is going to maximize their engagement and their physical activity. This is the third video in a series, so if you haven't watched the other two, they are also posted in the asynchronous session. So to start out, I would like to acknowledge the land. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories in Alberta of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whose voices and footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. I just always feel so blessed to live in this province because we have so many different environments that we can explore that are on our doorstep and within so close reach. So I always want to keep that in mind. I also encourage people to get outside as much as you possibly can with your students because it really does make a huge difference. So in the last video, we looked at a lot about what the teacher can do to increase engagement and learning. In this series, we're going to look more carefully at the individual students and what works for them, techniques that will help improve that side of the equation. So first off, let's jump into this because this is a question I get a lot from new teachers, people who are new to teaching phys ed, especially curriculum teachers who are now in the gym. What do we do with students not participating? So just take a moment and think about that. What do you personally do when students aren't participating? You know, well, I've got a headache. I've got something that's not feeling right. For me, it's a very clear expectation. So in the gym, I don't play the game very much. Now, am I a really hard line individual? No, you have to know your students. Right? At the heart of all good teaching is knowing your students to a point where you know if they're telling the truth or not. So for me, this no one sits out is the blanket expectation I give, but I know there's going to be some other opportunities. So are they just unwilling to not participate? Sometimes students are just waiting for an invitation, or they've never played the game before and they're nervous. Are they injured? Are they sick? Are they unable to play? Do they have some kind of disability? So for me, I would give them something to do, even if it's just stretching. Sometimes I have a student who, I actually have several students right now who have severe social anxiety. So for them, sometimes they'll come into my equipment room, which you're looking at right now. This is all student organized. It's actually a super cool little space. Like over here, this is in the last video I talked about our CrossFit. This is my CrossFit cage, right? So it has all of our CrossFit stuff in it, right down to our rings. Right, so we've got our strength rings that we got there, got our buckets, like our 20-pound and our 10-pound buckets. This is something interesting, right? These are our kettlebells, our budget kettlebells. Anyway, so like part of the gym is also knowing the equipment. And we've talked a little bit about some of those leadership roles that students can take from time to time in the gym. And if they can't sit out, okay, if it's a legitimate reason, maybe all they need to do is have something to do for that day. And sometimes students really don't want to do other things like stretching or even watching a class to find out who's going to be the MVP. MVP could be the person who is the most supportive of his classmates or her classmates. You could have them create a menu plan right? Like the physical education and wellness curriculum is so robust now, you could have them doing some research for an upcoming wellness piece as well. So don't hesitate to give kids stuff to do if they can't participate. For me, it's pretty clear I need a note. If they don't have a note, then I would actually have them call mom and dad. If they can't do phys ed, they probably shouldn't be at school. Okay. Other things I've done in the past is things like have kids keep score and watch for trends, right? Teach them to be the teacher. A lot of students don't ever get that opportunity to step back and watch a game and to make comments on it. So lots of opportunity there. Just try not to get into the battle of, oh, I let them sit out today, because many individuals will keep on doing that. Right? So I don't let kids sit out because, in my opinion, it's like for their health, it's the most important subject that they're participating in. Next one is this: how much explaining is too much? In the last video, we talked about the activity ratio, and that activity ratio is basically an indication of how much talk we do to how much action we get on the floor. And that, remember, action could be stretching, it could be warming up, it could be it could be anything, really. But this explaining really does affect your activity ratio. It's pretty clear with the research now that states that if you give kids more than 2 or 3 things, they've forgotten everything ahead of it. Okay? So students will zone out very quickly. If you can even talk while they're doing their warm-up. Right? You can talk while they're cooling off. Those are the times when you can kind of debrief stuff and do some of your discussion, because it's active discussion as well. When you're giving the main students, the main instructions, if they're not engaged, then they probably won't recall it or apply it. So all of those things, like the think, pair, share, still applies. Right? Can you give them a 30-second think and chat before they share? I will almost always actually have students summarize what I've just said before they go. That way they get that reinforcement. Now in this section, this is all about DEAR. So DEAR, it continues to evolve for me. I've added a couple of E's here and there. But the general principle is when we are giving instructions, the traditional way of doing it is to show a skill. Let's say I want you to do this little thing with your hands. Okay, where you, with your middle fingers, you just flip them side to side. Okay, just like that. Bing, 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 bing. A traditional way to teach a skill is to say, okay, I want you to take both of your hands and put them palm to palm. Make sure your thumbs are lined up. Next thing I want you to do is to wiggle your middle fingers, and I want you to put the right one to the left of the left one and the left one to the left of the right. And then I want you to switch them. Okay? Switch them. And we do it with them. And we show them how to do it. Okay? Now, this is great, but again, we're not allowing students to access their intuitive knowledge. Most people learn visually. That's how they're going to pick things up initially. So instead of me teaching you that, here's another one. So instead of doing just the middle finger, what should I do here? Okay, so I've showed it to you. In a class, I'd show you 2 or 3 times, and the next E stands for experiment. So without me saying a single word, I'm going to let you go and practice it now. Okay, so after you experiment, then we're going to come back as a group, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to explain it. I'm going to say, okay, well, what did we do? Well, we did the same thing with the middle finger, but we started on index, then middle, then index, then little finger. So now we're going to start to talk about it. If everyone in the class gets it, why would I need to explain much more? Okay, now this one here, the review, is the R, and then what I would actually have students do is I'd have them go and experiment again. Maybe I'm going to show them something a little harder. So this DEAR method allows you to stop talking and let kids get active right away. I initially started doing that for social dance. So my wife and I did a lot of work in social dance, and when we're teaching out leads, right? When we're teaching students how to lead each other in social dance, it takes a lot of explaining. And what we discovered is that if we would just show them how to do it and let them play around for about 2 minutes, 60%, 70% of people would get it And now all we have to do is tweak the little specific pieces. So this, again, if you're looking for one to three little key things to try this. It even works in math. Okay, this is such a cool thing. So learning a new skill, put it on the board, try it, show them, let them try it. You'll be amazed at how many students don't need to hear it as much as we think they do. Right? So again, the DEAR experiment is demonstrate, let them experiment. Then we can explain it, or even better, you can have a discussion and have them analyze what they did, what worked and what didn't. Then you can review it, or you can experiment again. Okay. So, next one is how well can students analyze their own errors? So this is the difference between having a teacher give you some kind of feedback and actually being able to see what's happening on your own. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make this big, and I'm going to show you a demonstration of this. Okay, there we go. I'm going to lower my camera down. There we go. Too bad I can't hire a cameraman. Okay, so in the last video we talked about perfect, wrong, perfect, right? So if you have a student who is in a, let's say, a throwing unit, and you see them throw the ball and they're doing this. Okay, by the way, this is a preview into some of our scope and sequencing for our specific skill series that are coming up. Okay, so that kid is throwing in an immature way. Okay, so the big thing here is that ideally we want to have this step, point, throw. That's our progression. Okay? When you walk in opposition. So this kid here keeps doing this, okay, and they're not even aware what they're doing. So how do we get group of students to do that? Well, we're going to break it down really slowly, so much to the point where it's like, here, look, do you feel that? Which hand is forward? Your opposite hand is forward. Tap on your leg. That leg has to be forward. Are you tapping with the same hand or the opposite hand that you're throwing with? This is the opposite hand. So now, if I'm pointing and I'm stepping with that same foot, then I throw. Well, now hopefully we can start to build that little bit of a rotation. So when students start to see that, now you can say, hey, is that same foot or different foot? When they start to see errors in themselves and in their peers, that's when they can start to progress. Got a big cursor on my head there. Right now, so you can also have students look at other students and say, hey, you're using your opposite foot, great. And to get that in a positive way, that does take time. But again, those are part of our cusps. So within our curriculum, we have this opportunity to encourage our classmates to be able to analyze what we're doing. Right? And that's the difference, is that if you tap that leg, you're actually feeling the difference. Okay? So these little tips start to really accelerate students' learning. Oh, this is a little bonus. I had the privilege of working with this incredible physical education teacher from Korea. And when he started to show us how they built movement patterns, it blew our minds, because a lot of the Korean program at that time was based around martial arts. So when we have things like martial arts, gymnastics, dance, track and field, these are called grandfather or grandmother sports because they work both sides of the body. Okay? Something like baseball is very one-side dominant. Doesn't mean it's worse, it just means it's different. So when you are working with elementary students, like all elementary students, I do this even with my junior highs, when we're working with students on new movement patterns, one of the crazy things that we learn how to do is to actually work both sides. All right, so there's a game called cricket. Cricket's like one of my favorite batting games to teach. And when you bowl in cricket, it looks like this. It's a really bizarre thing because we never bend our elbow when we throw. Okay? I love it because it's such a different motion pattern for most students. So we step in and throw. Now, even when I'm at that initial stage where we use a clock, right, and all we're doing is that action, what I would have them do is to reverse it. So if I'm facing the camera, again, you'll notice I'm right-handed, which is this is where my ball would be. Okay, my opposite leg and foot are forward, and I'm just swinging forward. So now you ask the students, okay, let's do this on the other side. And many of them will keep that foot there and they'll try and do it with the other hand. So the whole concept is now I switch. I'm throwing with my left hand, I switch. And then when we watch the pattern, it should look almost identical from left to right. Okay? And what the Korean program was before the kids even throw a ball, they would do something like this. It becomes like a dance. Because what they're learning is that the opposite foot has to be forward and I need to lean as I move. So these patterns really start to build these lifelong skills on how to develop a new skill and how to develop the confidence to try new sports. Because if you have opposition in throwing, it translates through almost all other sports. Okay? So I was so excited when I met this guy because it really did. It added a whole new dynamic to my own physical education program. Hey, we've already been there. Let's move forward, not back. When I was a younger teacher, I made a lot of mistakes with this. A lot of mistakes. First mistake I made as a young coach and phys ed teacher was that I talked way too much. You know, I got really caught up in this like compliment sandwich. So I'd say so many great things to a kid before I would ever not criticize, well, it is a criticism, before I would correct what they were doing. And what I found out, the older I got and the more experience I got, was sometimes more praise, kids start to see through it. And now they kind of hesitate. Now they're a little leery of what you're about to say. And every time I go up to say something, they know I'm going to correct them. So there's this little red book. The little red book. It's called the Talent Code. The Talent Code is this fabulous book, but there's a condensed version of it. And I personally think every teacher should read it because it is like 6 years worth of research on how you actually build skill. And it gives so many great tips. But one of the key things when we are using feedback is it needs to be short, it needs to be precise. It usually does start with something you're doing right and then something to correct. Right? And when we tighten up our language, when we tighten up how we give feedback, if you've read the 1 Minute Manager, again, brilliant book because it allows you to get in, get out really quick, and the students know exactly what they're working on. Hold on. Come back. Where did we go there? I'm going to talk a little bit more about this because I think I'm missing a slide. Okay. So, for example, let's go back to the analogy of our student who is throwing a ball. Because if this student is throwing a ball and they don't have it quite right yet, okay, so the student's still throwing with same foot, immature throwing pattern. Okay, what would be the first thing you would tell that kid to do? And this is like, think through that. So what's the first thing you would tell that kid to do? Just step with the opposite foot? Maybe, but the big thing here is that there's all kinds of things we can back up to. So for example, if I have a ball, I have the kid with a ball, I'm going to have him put the ball next to his left foot, just like that. So now when he goes down to get that ball, he has to step back with the right foot. Okay, so let's say I've got this kid, he's in grade 4, and he's still throwing this way. Okay, for the next little while, I would actually have the whole class do this because it's good for everyone. I'd put the ball down, so everyone put the ball down next to your left foot. Fantastic. And the instruction is pick up the ball and roll it to your partner. So we pick up the ball and we roll it to our partner. That's it. Pick it up and roll it. Pick it up and roll it. Okay? So we're condensing that conversation down to 2 things. Right? Now, as we move forward with that progression, there's probably 2 or 3 steps we're going to use to get that entire class to now step with opposition. But again, try to avoid really long, positive explanations. Give them one thing they're doing well and something to work on. Right. Do you make up rules? In the last video, we talked quite a bit about having fun with students, right? Making phys ed something where they have a say in. In any games you're playing, this has such a big impact to engage students in the activities that you're doing. Allow them to make up a rule. If the game's not going well, shift it. In a dodgeball game where you have one kid left, right? One kid left running back and forth, doesn't throw a single ball, you've got 15 balls on that side, and you have a whole team holding 2 balls. This is not a good situation, right? The competition is going to get high. That poor kid on the other side isn't having fun, and you got probably 5 to 15 kids who are sitting out just watching it happen. Hopefully they're cheering. You can work on that team sportsmanship if you're doing some kind of elimination. Right? So what I would do is I'd pause the game and say, okay, how can we adjust this? Anyone got any ideas? Can we put one of the players in a penny to go and get balls to throw back? Right? Could we have someone who could collect balls and make sure everyone has some? Could you have one person on a team who doesn't actually throw a ball? All they do is they deliver balls to everyone on their team. Right? In dodgeball, you have to run a lap, right? Instead of being eliminated, why not run a lap of the gym? And I'm using dodgeball. I don't play dodgeball very often. I have about 5 different versions that don't involve elimination, take the emphasis off of hitting the other person hard. I do think it's a good game for tracking and catching, and also for that like avoidance of things. Anyway, so instead of having a kid sit out, have them run a lap of the gym and get right back in. I once played this ridiculous game that we made up. And the craziest thing is that at one point the class wanted, if something happened, you had to sing "Oh Canada" by a hockey goal. And that was their choice. And we did it. It was fantastic. Another one here, this "Thank you for tagging me." That was something that came out of an elementary phys ed class because the kids were getting really upset when they got tagged. So we turned it into an opportunity to actually appreciate each other's athletic ability. So when someone got tagged with a noodle, they would stop and say, "Thank you, John, for tagging me." And the other person would say, "You're welcome. I enjoyed tagging you. Good luck tagging someone else." And then it would move from there. So again, little silly things that really pull students in. Now, this is another fascinating way to really start to dial in. So the overview is going to be it's going to be different for every kid. So when we're doing something like juggling, what we need to do is we need to see where each kid is starting from. Now the curriculum, the cusps are really specific this round. So it'll say like the non-locomotor skills are hopping, jumping, and sliding. But you're going to have kids who can already do that. So just like you would in a regular classroom, it's important that you build out some opportunities for those kids. Still have to see them do it, but can we build it out? So can you progressively challenge students at any time? Easy way to do it is increase the number. Give them another challenge. If you're juggling with scarves and the kids can do that, they're doing 2 scarves, give them 3. Once they've done that 10 times, give them 4. If a kid can do that, give them 5. Right? You're highly, like those really athletic kids are going to like keep chomping at the bit to meet your next expectation. Have them throw it up and do a 360 before they catch it. Okay? Just those little challenges. And a great way to do that is do 10, see me. The kids who are struggling or don't love what you're doing, they'll still do it because you're watching them with the zones from the last video. Right? No kids are ever hiding from you. Keep those eyes, constant vigilance. All right, so back to this feedback. This was the slide, it's just out of order. So, here we go. What's working, what's not, what to change. Okay, specific. Right, so again, we got a student who's throwing. Hey, your follow through is fantastic. You're stepping with the wrong foot, step with your left foot. Then you ask them, what are you going to do with? Step with the left foot. Great. If they still can't do it, tap the left leg. That's the foot you're stepping with. Step with the left foot. You leave them with one thing to focus on. That's it. Nothing more. Okay? 1 or 2 step cues. So in another book that I read, there was a tennis player who became a coach. And he was really struggling because he couldn't get people who weren't very experienced to hit the ball. because he was giving them all the specific feedback, all this feedback, right? Just plant your feet here, look here, grip this way. And what he found was once people had kind of a basic understanding, all he had to have them say in their head was bounce, hit, and their progress skyrocketed. Remember, the brain is a simple thing. So, for example, if we're throwing a ball, I use step, point, throw. It's 3 things. That's it. Everything else starts to fall into place. Okay, so simple changes. Remember, if you start talking like I'm just talking, right? If you start talking and talking and talking, they forget the essential. They don't even know why you're there anymore. They just want to play. Bounce, hit, step, point, throw. Always, always, always accentuate the positive. Okay, that comes back to this catch a kid being good. If we are focusing on positivity, you will start to see your students be more positive. If we are punishing kids, calling kids out, criticizing kids, right? If they're so energetic that they can't focus on the task, it's up to us to readjust the situation. Maybe burn them out. Maybe you got to do 20 jumping jacks. Maybe you got to have them touch the letters on the wall, which are coming soon. Okay? There's all kinds of things that we do to make sure that everything we do in the gym is that positive. And if something negative comes up, we're going to step back from that. We're going to step back and we debrief it, and then we move on back to the positive. So direct teaching. Short, 3 to 5 minutes, max. Right? You don't have to tell them the whole story unless that's something that you're focusing on as part of the cusps. Right? If it's a new game, can you actually give them the rules to the game ahead of time? Right? You do not, whoa, almost dropped my mic. You do not need to have kids spend all their time sitting and listening. Okay? You're doing some reading comprehension in class if you're a generalist, right? So like here, sometimes I'll post the activities that we're going to play. So up here, this is a wall ball game, right? So I have another one over here that I just finished up. It's a game from Ecuador that I'm kind of piloting right now. So every kid got 2 pages. This was in junior high groups. This is a grade 6 and 7 group. And I gave that to them in class. I gave them 10 minutes to read it before we came to the gym. Now the crazy thing is, while they were doing their warm-up, they had to review the rules. It was on them, not on me. And pretty much we went into, as soon as we had a little bit of skill, we went right into playing the game. So what did that mean for me? That means when I was in the gym for our phys ed time, I was tight. Okay? I only had to stop and add about 2, 3, 4, about 5 minutes in 45-minute phys ed class. Other than that, they were playing. So keep it short and specific. I love this kid over here. This is from that book from the 80s again. Short chunks, we talked about that. There's absolutely no point trying to teach perfect form or perfect technique when students are just learning. It's way better to give them something to play with, something to manipulate, and modify it as you go. This game called Kinsei is actually played with a yarn ball that we make. And it's a wall ball game, so you hit the ball around. So for 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes with my junior high, my grade 6s, we did skills. And then we moved around. We did partner skills. We would hit it against the wall. And that's all we did, is we built the capacity while they were playing these little games with themselves and with others. Right? And again, I don't stop. I say, curve your hand, hit with the middle of your hand, try it now. And then they go and do it. If you can do that 20 times, come and see me. That was a class, and it was beautiful. And it means that I'm not teaching or talking so much. Bounce hit, again, this is that summarize it down. Step, point, throw. 1, 2, whoop-de-woo. If anyone here has played handball before, it's a very complicated stepping pattern you do to throw a handball. It takes a lot of practice. I can teach it now in less than a minute using 1, 2, whoop-de-woo, where 1, 2 are just a step. I just tripped myself again. So I'm going to make this bigger and show you, because it's kind of interesting to see. This is the kind of stuff that I play around with to see how quickly I can get kids to do the skill. So the full thing is 1, 2, Now watch the whoop-de-woo. Whoop-de-woo. I'll do it coming towards the camera. Okay? So I have right, left, hop, there. So we get 1, 2, whoop-de-woo. And that's it. That's actually the basis of all the footwork. And for me, that's homework for kids. So I have kids practice that at home. When they come next time, now we're going to break it down into how we actually throw with that. Short chunks. There it is. Drills. So if you are going to use drills, and drills are great. I use them periodically. I use more games now. But drills are important to scaffold the game. If there's a specific skill that your class can't, those students just can't comprehend, what kind of a drill can you create to target that one specific thing? Okay, one that comes up really often is this notion of passing or moving to open space, right? How many times are we playing games where kids just clump up? Right? I use a peanut butter analogy where you don't put peanut butter on like a huge chunk in one corner of your bread. You want to spread it out, right? So it's even all over the bread. Same thing with the gym floor. So what kind of a drill or an activity could you create where you have to maintain distance from as many people as you can? Those are the kind of drills that are going to push their understanding, their tactical awareness, their spatial awareness forward. Right? And remember, drills don't always have to come first. I think actually they should come at least second or third in your day. If you see smiles and laughter, that is a good amount of challenge. Right? So if kids are enjoying the drill, keep playing it. Let it go. Make it a little harder. A drill can become the highlight of a unit. There's this game called Box-to-Mitt that I play in Ultimate Frisbee. And a lot of times students don't even want to play the real game because it's so much fun. If the drills you're running are too easy, you're going to see kids checked out and chatting. And often if it's too hard, they just won't even try. So again, when we're doing any kind of drill development, we're looking for those multiple challenge points. So again, if you can do this 5 times, here's another challenge. Come and see me. Now, why wouldn't I give that whole challenge to the whole class? Some of the kids are never going to get there. Right? Just like in writing or in math, if a kid can answer your hardest question on the board, they're ready for something more. Same thing in phys ed, right? The last one is to add activities and game situations. So if you're doing a drill, I wouldn't stay in a drill for too long before you're applying it with most kids moving around. This is an interesting thing. Most drills are way too easy. In academics now, I've been working with this whole notion of failure, and they're actually saying that about a 30 to 40% failure rate is what we want for maximum growth and learning. So the brain needs these big challenges to improve. So if most of your kids are getting it, probably it's time to make it harder, increase some complexity to it. And again, you can even ask them to increase the complexity. Watch, modify, right? So anytime you're running drills or games, if it's getting bored, switch it. Okay, it doesn't take too long. And this one, this has been a focus of mine in all of my teaching since my daughter was in school. Because what I started to realize is that a lot of education focuses on the kids in the middle and the kids who are struggling. And the kids at the top often kind of get missed out. They kind of get left to their own kind of devices. And in phys ed, we're missing a huge opportunity to accelerate the learning of that class when we don't tap in to our strong athletes, our ADHD kids who have a lot of energy and can go for the entire class. So the Gretzky mentality is, Wayne Gretzky mentality is often where I like to go to when I'm talking about this. Because Wayne Gretzky was the greatest not because he was the best shot, is because he made so many of his teammates look good. So he was the master of setting things up and seeing the bigger picture. So if you have students from my last video who are constantly winning the same game, it's not challenging enough for them, and it's not set up so they can compete at an equal level. Or the challenges we're asking of them should be more than just athletic, right? So our really smart math kids, the kids who get it first time, they're often the ones who are going to support those other students who are not. It should be the same in phys ed. So those really strong athletes, for them, I'm often going to pair them up with the students who are still needing support to help them practice. What do they see? What can they coach that student in? How can they help that student have success? Again, I will often have that student throw left-handed. In badminton, if a student knows they're going to beat that other kid, they're not allowed to play with their dominant hand. It's a really subtle thing. So we do little things like this to give them challenges, so they now have to work at an equal level, but at a different skill. So another thing that I can do with especially a really good badminton player is I'll have them play their home position at the back line. So I'll just, as I'm doing my feedback, I'll say, hey, John, just home position at the back line. Because now they're going to have to work twice as hard to get every shot, right? So can we use them for like teacher's assistants? Can we use them for setting up fields? Can we use them for taking a leadership role on a specific team that's struggling, right? And not just always getting the praise that, oh, they're the best gaga ball player, right? If 1 or 2, 3 kids are always in the end of a gaga ball pit, okay, we got to change that up, because that's not what physical education is about. Okay, that's more competition. Yeah. And once you get those really strong athletes hooked, the coolest thing happens, because they now become invested in their group success. So if they've just scored 2 points and you say you're not allowed to score till everyone else does, man, they are going to be, well, they can become a motivational force. They can become jerks. We've all seen that, right? They can get pretty upset and frustrated, but again, that's sportsmanship, right? That's life. It's working with people. It's collaborating. Next thing is this, is what are the key skills? So in math, we have this thing called the commutative law. Okay? It's a beautiful thing that allows us to multiply and add in different directions. And once students understand these underlying rules and laws, what I find is that those students can now apply that to so many other different concepts, right? And in phys ed, there's not that many movement patterns. It's like dance, right? My wife is a dancer and a choreographer, and I taught dance for many years. And there aren't that many new dance moves. There just aren't. It's the combinations we use them and how we put them together. So for example, body rotation. When we look at body rotation is like the essence of pretty much every sport. That's how we get force, that's how we build propulsion, that's how we build power, right? That's in every sport we do. So if we're throwing a football, okay, ideally when we start throwing a football, we have perpendicular and parallel. If I'm throwing to the camera, I'm actually not starting facing my target. I'm starting facing away, and I get my step point throw. The hips turn, right? It actually starts on the foot, hip, shoulders, arm. Okay, that's the acceleration of the power. Now, if I go to baseball, it's the exact same thing. If I go to ultimate frisbee, now I'm facing the opposite way to throw my backhand. Okay? But I still have a translation and a rotation. Hockey is here. Golf is here. Cricket is here. Slightly different motion patterns, but we're always rotating. Okay? So again, when we start to help kids at a young age start to work on the rotation, well, it doesn't matter what we give them now. We could give them a scoop. We could give them a rubber chicken. And if we say, oh, don't forget to rotate, we start to get that process. We start to get that transfer of skill starting to come through. Yeah, step point throw, perpendicular stance versus parallel. How do we catch? Well, catching is the opposite. Okay, catching, we're always actually perpendicular to our target, or parallel to our target. Sorry, parallel. So we're always facing our target. You don't want to catch this way. It's not going to be very effective. Right? So again, identifying some of these key movement patterns are kind of essential, and if we can do that at a young age, we can actually start to progress much faster at the junior high level. Okay, one of my criticisms of junior high and senior high, when I was even in it, I found it challenging, was when we go from year to year, often in a basketball unit, there's not much progress. What ends up happening is we do dribbling, shooting, passing, games. Right? There's not a lot of increasing of complexity. So these things, these little tips, like the focus on spatial awareness in the elementary cusps, that should lead us to be doing more complicated stuff in terms of tactics, offense, defense. Like how do you actually protect a zone in the upper end classes? So what are the key skills? Parallel, perpendicular. How do you start? Okay. Next thing is body rotation. Just mentioned that. BYK. This is from John Clark, an incredible phys ed teacher and mentor. It stands for bend your knees. In every sport, if you are not focused on one or two key things, bend your knees. Okay? I love walking into volleyball classes because before a ball is served, what I usually see is students standing up straight. When we know in every sport, we need to be down and ready. Bend your knees. That's the secret of all sports. Okay? Well, almost all. Most sports. Okay? Is just to bend your knees. So when I'm teaching volleyball, even for the little kids, right? Like grade 3, we got nice soft balls for them. We don't hit a ball over the net until everyone jumps down or touches the ground and gets ready. Because again, we're building success for later in life. ITC stands for in the center. That means whatever's going around you, you want to be focused on where you are and which way you're going. Now, the last one is look first. Don't make a pass. Don't run. Don't go anywhere until you've actually looked. When it comes down to it, student success in phys ed comes down to 3 things for me. Number 1, are they having fun? Right? Look around. If they're not, something in the environment needs to shift. Maybe we need to let go of control. Maybe we're trying to force a specific unit. Maybe we're not giving students enough pleasure in warm-ups. Maybe we're not pushing them hard enough. Maybe we're letting them get away with being lazy. Maybe we're letting them sit down instead of get up and move, right? And it takes time and it takes energy and it takes persistence to get kids to a point where they're all willing to participate in some way. A lot of my students have been really scared. Some of them have never been in an environment because they're homeschooled, where they had to play with other kids. And sometimes it takes me months to get a kid to step onto a handball court where they can run around with kids and not be intimidated. Okay, are they making progress? So do we actually see a physical change in how they move on the floor, how they throw, how they catch, how they move, how they communicate? And the last one, because we are teachers, is are we reaching those cusps? Right? Are we checking those things off as we go? Are we moving from like a surface acquisition to that surface, like to more of a consolidation? And then can they transfer those skills? Okay, that's the ultimate, is when they can start to transfer. This is our next session I'll be doing. This is video 4, and I realize that I have not been putting this up at the end of these first 2. So if you have any questions, you need some more support, I do work with teachers one-to-one on Zoom. If you need that, that's one of the services that I try to provide anyone who's listening to my sessions. There's my emails. Other than that, I am yours in pursuit of a happier, healthier, and more engaged population. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.